To try a capital case, how many judges must a Noahide court have? In the last video, we saw that capital cases must be brought to a court. In this video, we'll explore how many judges are required in this court and where that number comes from in the Bible. Again, in this video, we're only talking about Noahide societies. So how many judges does a Noahide capital case require? The answer is one judge. How do we know? First, it is a general principle that the Torah does not specify exact numbers or exact detailed procedures for non-Jews. Non-Jews are just commanded in the broad 7 Noahide laws. The Torah gives non-Jews a core obligation to establish courts of justice that will rule on the other 6 Noahide laws, but it doesn't present a fully developed legal system for non-Jews, like the way it does for Israel. So when non-Jews are commanded to establish courts, the assumption is that the minimum structure required for courts to be able to have justice is sufficient for non-Jews. So we have the command to establish courts, and at the most basic level, a court can exist with only one judge. As always, everything is rooted in the Torah. Our sages don't just rely on logic alone. And so our sages say that the concept of one judge for non-Jews is derived from Genesis 9 verse 5. Here God says, "But the blood of your lives I will require." In this verse, God is demanding accountability for murder, and God expresses it in the singular. I will require. The sages then understand that this is referring to a single unit of enforcement, and therefore does not inherently require multiple judges. So in order to meet God's demand, it only has to be through one judge, as long as God's demand for justice is carried out. In the next verse, Genesis 9 verse 6, we've already seen that God wants murderers to be put to death by courts. Nowhere in these verses does God say that there needs to be multiple men to put these murderers to death. By man shall his blood be shed, not by many men shall his blood be shed. So putting last video and this video together, by man establishes that there must be a system of justice, and I will require teaches that this system can function at the level of even just one judge. Therefore, even one judge is sufficient for Noahide courts in capital cases. Now, in a Noahide society, though, this judge must meet the proper requirements to be a judge, and in future videos we'll go into these requirements. Yet, if no judge meets all of the requirements, we still take whoever meets most of them. So the question arises, can a Noahide court have more than one judge? The answer is yes. And not only is the answer yes, but Noahide courts are encouraged to have 3 or more judges for a single case. How do we know? A Midrash, part of the oral Torah, offers some insight into how a pre-Sinai Noahide court functioned. Here's the context. In Genesis, Tamar was left childless after her husband died, after she married into Judah's family. Judah instructed her to wait until his son Shelah grew up, and then Judah would presumably give Shelah to Tamar, but Judah never followed through. So then Tamar remained tied to Judah's household while still unable to have children. So after Shelah grew up and Judah didn't give him to Tamar, Tamar took matters into her own hands, disguised herself as a prostitute, enticed Judah, and then became pregnant. When this became known, Judah ruled, "Take her out and let her be burned." Now at this moment, Judah is acting as a judge, issuing a capital ruling based on what he believed to be a violation of the family structure. Importantly though, if you're a Noahide, I don't want you to get confused. His ruling reflects the moral and legal norms of his society. His ruling is not part of the formal Noahide code itself. The Noahide code is the minimum, and his society took extra stringencies when it came to family relations. But anyway, back to the story. Tamar then produced items that Judah had given her when they had relations, and upon recognizing them, Judah publicly reversed his ruling and said, "She is more righteous than I, because I did not give her to my son Shelah." Now importantly for this discussion, a Midrash comments on this episode and describes it explicitly as a case of judgment. It says that the case of Tamar came before Judah, and that Isaac, Jacob, and Judah's brothers were sitting there with him. Now we know that a Noahide court only requires one judge, but it seems like this Noahide court had multiple judges. They were all sitting there with Judah. So like that extra stringency in the law concerning family relations, the society also seemed to have another stringency of having multiple judges. And this stringency is very praiseworthy, very beneficial. Because with additional judges, there is greater deliberation, greater care in this case than if there had just only been one judge. A majority opinion is preferable. Indeed, the sages said in a manner of good advice and piety that one should not act as a judge alone, for there is no single judge except for the one. With all this said though, if a court decides to have more than one judge, it should try not to have an even number of judges because we want there to be a majority opinion, and even number of judges has a possibility of that majority opinion not being able to happen. Now this part's based on logic, but God commanded Israel to follow the majority in judgments from the sages. Now if such a case happens where there's an even number of judges, if there's a majority opinion, then their ruling is valid. If there's a tie, however, a judge or a few judges should be added to make up a majority opinion on the matter. So to summarize, for Noahide capital cases, the court requires one judge, specifically one judge that meets the conditions that we're going to go into in another video. We know this from the oral tradition, from the derivation of Genesis 9 verse 5, where demanding justice is expressed in the singular, not plural, and from logic. What is the minimum requirement necessary to establish courts of justice? So a single judge suffices for justice. Now Noahide courts are encouraged to have more than one judge, again based on the oral tradition and logic. In the Noahide society of the patriarchs, we know that Judah, Isaac, and Jacob ruled on the case involving Tamar, constituting at least 3 judges, and Judah's other brothers were present as well. Optimally, there shouldn't really be an even number of judges, but if there is, their ruling still holds. But if there's a tie, judges or a judge should be added to help them reach a majority decision. For more about the Noahide court system, I encourage you to subscribe. This is the court system of the future. I hope you enjoyed, learned something. Thank you, as always, for watching.